In this video, we'll go through some of the questions in exercise 4.8, beginning with question number 1. A movie ticket costs $8.50, popcorn costs $2.25, and a drink costs $1.75. How much does it cost to go to a movie and have a popcorn and a drink? So what we need to do is combine all of these values. We can see that when we combine mixed numbers, we need to have a common denominator. So we have 2, 4, and 4. So our lowest common denominator is 4. So we only need to change our first fraction by multiplying it by 2. So we change that to 8 2/4 plus 2 1/4 plus 1 3/4. Now we're in a position where we can add our whole numbers and add our numerators. So 8 plus 2 plus 1 is 11. And our denominator stays the same. And we add 2 plus 1 is 3, plus another 3 is 6. At this point, we have a fraction that is an improper fraction. So we're going to need to divide up to change that to a mixed number. 4 goes into 6 once. 2 left over out of 4. This 2/4 needs to be reduced to 1 1/2. And we have to remember to add on that $11. So our final answer here is going to be 12 1/2, which is $12.50. Now this was method 1. But there's one other way we can look at this question, and it's not common, but you can look for it with word problems or even with fractions, especially if you are using halves and quarters. You can look to combine values that equal 1. So we can see here that 2 1/4 and 1 3/4 have the same denominator. So we can add those two fractions together, getting 4/4, which is equal to 1, and then add that plus the $2 plus the $1. So that's going to equal $4 plus the 8 1/2. Now we just need to add our whole numbers, getting 12 1/2. So method 2, it doesn't work all the time, but especially when you have quarters and halves, you can look to combine your fractions differently. Just save yourself a little bit of time. But method 1 is always foolproof, common denominator, and add your numerators and add your whole numbers. Question number 2, Sandy is putting trim around the edge of a triangular pillow. Two sides of the pillow measure 20 3/4 centimeters each, and the third side measures 12 3/8 centimeters. How much trim does Sandy need altogether? Whenever I have a shape question, I like to draw the shape. Even if it's not to scale and doesn't look that good, it really helps me to visualize this pillow. So 2 of the sides are the same, 20 3/4. And the third side, even though it looks the same, it's shorter, 12 3/8. And these are all in centimeters. So that helps me to visualize what this pillow will look like. And now I can add these 3 values together. 20 3/4 plus 20 3/4 plus 12 3/8. So we can see we've got some options here. We can change all of them to have common denominators. Or what we could do is we could add the ones that are like fractions first and then just change the answer. So that would save us a little bit of work. So I'm going to show that method. So I'm just going to add the first 2 numbers. 20 plus 20 is 40. And then the 3/4 plus 3/4 is 6/4. And I'm even just going to leave that the way it is. And then I'm going to add the 12 3/8. And now I see that I have a common denominator of 8 because I have 4 and 8. So I only have to change my first fraction. So I'm going to multiply that by 2. So that's going to be 40 and 12/8 plus 12 and 3/8. Now I can add my whole numbers and add my numerators. So 40 plus 12 is 52. 12 plus 3 is 15 over 8. And I can change that improper fraction to a mixed number and add it on to the 52. So 8 goes into 15 once with 7 left over out of 8, plus the 52 gives me a final answer of 53 and 7/8 of a centimeter. Question 6. On Monday, a doctor worked 3.5 hours in the morning and 5 hours in the afternoon. On Tuesday, the doctor worked 3 3/4 hours in the morning and 4.5 hours in the afternoon. How many more hours did the doctor work on Monday than on Tuesday? Okay, so the question wants to know how many more hours on Monday and compared to Tuesday, but we don't know the totals for Monday or Tuesday. So we're going to first kind of make a chart and figure out the totals for each of the days first before we can compare them. So Monday is 3.5 in the morning plus 5 in the afternoon. When we have fractions that we're adding together, we've got these a mixed number plus a whole number. We simply have to add the whole number and take the fraction along. So Monday is 8.5 hours. Tuesday we have 3 3/4 plus 4.5. In order to add these fractions, we need to have the lowest common multiple or lowest common denominator. And that lowest common multiple or denominator here is 4. So we're going to multiply our second fraction by 2. So that's going to give us 3 3/4 plus 4 2/4, which equals 7 5/4. And we need to change that improper fraction to a mixed number. 4 goes into 5 once with 1 left over, and add back onto that 7. So Tuesday is a total of 8 1/4. So Tuesday is 8 1/4 hours. Now we're going to have to subtract how many more on Monday than on Tuesday. So this was our first step to determine how many in total for each day. Second step is 8.5 minus 8 1/4. Again, we need to change our fractions to common denominators. So we're just going to raise the terms for 8.5 to 8 2/4 minus 8 1/4. 8 minus 8 is nothing, and 2 minus 1 is 1 over 4. So the difference between the 2 days is 1/4 of an hour. So the doctor worked 1/4 hour more on Monday. Question number 9 is a simple question but can really trip people up. In math, all of something is represented by the number 1. If 3/4 of a football game has been played, what fraction of the game remains to be played? So if we are looking at a full game is represented by the number 1. So we are going to take that and subtract away what we've played. Well, what does 1 mean, right? What is 1 in terms of a fraction? There's a couple ways of looking at this. We can make 1 into a fraction by using the common denominator. So method 1, how we can see this is we say, well, 1 whole, if we want to use the same denominator as 3/4, is 4/4. And then we can take away the 3/4, which makes 1/4 remaining. Method 2 is where we set the problem up as a whole number 1 minus 3/4, and then we recognize that we can make a whole number into a fraction by placing it over 1. And then we need a common denominator, which means we need to multiply our fraction by 4, leading us to 4/4 minus 3/4. Remember, whenever you have a whole number, if you need to create it into a fraction, you simply need to place that whole number over 1, and then you can decide what needs to come next. Whichever method you use, method 1 or 2, you're going to end up with 1/4 of the game remaining. Number 10, each month a truck driver spends 3/5 of his money on groceries and bills and 3/20 of his money on entertainment. He saves the rest. What fraction of his money does he save? So this problem can cause difficulty, especially when you have a question like this mixed in with multiplication and division, because of the word of. But we don't know how much money he's making, so we can't multiply 3/5 of a certain amount and 3/20 of a certain amount. If we knew the money value, we could determine exactly how much money he's saving and spending. But what we're doing here is we're combining what is he spending on groceries and bills and what is he spending on entertainment. And then we can determine what that is and then take that away from the total. So we'll get to that. So let's do step 1. So step 1, we're going to add what he's spending, 3/5 plus 3/20. And now we need our lowest common denominator. The LCD of 5 and 20 is 20, so we only need to multiply our first fraction by 4. So this will give us 12/20 plus 3/20 equals 15/20. This is what he spends. The second step is to determine what does he save. Well, if he spends 15 out of 20, and the total or maximum one whole is 20 out of 20, then we can subtract away what he spends from the maximum he can get. The denominators are like, so we can simply keep the denominator and subtract our numerators. 20 minus 15 is 5. And because our fraction is not in lowest terms, we must reduce it. So we're going to divide by 5. And that will get us down to 1/4. So he saves 1/4 or 1/4 of his money.